Now, welcome to World Chef's podcast. I'm your host, Ragnar, and this is World on a Plate. Have you ever heard of Burnt Chef? Well, I'm excited to welcome with us today Kris Hall, founder of the Burnt Chef Project, who several years ago, Kris worked as a sales representative in the food supplier industry, where he gained perspective on the high pressure environment of the hospitality industry. At the same time, dealing with his own battle with depression and recognizing that many others in our industry were struggling in silence. So, in 2019, he launched the Burnt Chef Project, a nonprofit dedicated to raising awareness, providing support, and eradicating the stigma around mental health and hospitality. So we're really, really happy to have with us today Kris here in person to talk about the project and of well-being in the industry. So, Kris, thank you for joining us.
Thank you ever so much for inviting me to be on. Yeah, it's an absolute pleasure.
It's great to see you, Kris, and really a fascinating story. I can't wait to hear more about. I sort of evoked in my introduction the your own battle with depression, and sort of that was the click that started the Burnt Chef project. Tell me more about that. So, what was your like? How was your what was your perception, and what got you then started in the Burnt Chefs?
Very good question. So, my background has been in sales and marketing since I left college. And I remember looking back now, even back when I was in college, I was really struggling with my mental health in terms of depression, anxiety, paranoia. Um, but I didn't know what it was at the time. I just thought I was a moody teenager, and I luckily enough I managed to make a self recovery from that over a period of time. But I fell in love with hospitality during my late teens, mid 20s. I used to work in bars and nightclubs in the south coast of England, and it was amazing. You got to see people having fun, you got to work with incredible individuals, and you got paid for it at the same time. Like, what's not to love about this? I fell into hospitality full time back in probably around about 2012, 2014, where I was supplying chefs with fine dining ingredients. And it was my first time walking into kitchens. Before that point, I'd already always been told as a barman, never go and speak to the chef. Don't go into the kitchen. It's not a safe place. They're really angry. And I thought, okay, so I walked into the hospitality industry, and I remember this fine dining kitchen I walked into, first kitchen I ever went into. And I sort of said, all right, where's this chef to then? Like, I've got some grouse to sell. And everyone sort of looked up from their stations and they started shaking their head and going, "Oh no, no, this is not a good idea." It's like a film, like Disney films where you've got the cat that's chasing the mice, and the mice are going, "No, don't go out. There's a cat out there." And so everyone sort of looked up fearful, and I was like, "This is odd behavior." And the chef came out the kitchen, and he looked at me and he said, "What the fuck are you doing in my kitchen?" He said, "What are you doing here? Get out!" And he literally manhandled me out the kitchen. And I went back to the office and I sort of licked my wounds and I went, "What? This guy? Like, what's his problem?" I was here to talk to him and introduce myself. And my boss at the time said, "Well, what time did you go into the kitchen?" I said, 1 o'clock in the afternoon. Why? And he said, he said, "Never, ever go in the kitchen between 11:30 and 3 o'clock in the afternoon." And I was like, "What?" And at that point, it suddenly like sparked this curiosity. I was like, this is a whole side of the hospitality profession that I wasn't familiar with. And I knew that if I wanted to have a sustainable and successful career, I needed to understand exactly who it was I was speaking to, what it was they were interested in, how the world operated. And I spent the next 10 years or so doing that. Um, During that period of my career, and I used to train ex-chefs into sales professionals as well during that. But I was really struggling again with my mental health, and it was down to, ironically, it was down to my workplace being a great workplace. My boss used to empower me. He said, if you don't like dealing with a certain individual, be prepared to stand up for yourself and say no. And that's okay to say no. And there was something about that that really sent me into a spiral because I wasn't that way inclined. I'd say yes to everything. And long story short, I ended up getting in my own head. I started to think that I was broken and damaged, and I sort of sunk into a depression, and it culminated in me effectively reaching a crisis point. And it wasn't like a case of I went, oh, I was in crisis. I'm just going to pop to the doctors the next day and get help. That process took a lot longer than it should have done. It took over a year for me to recognize that one, help was out there, and two, not to be ashamed of being able to go and get it. Because I genuinely thought I was the only person on the planet who was struggling and in this dark place. It turned out that I wasn't. And with this knowledge and the recovery that I made, I wanted to try and make a meaningful impact and a change to the industry that I've fallen in love with. And I started trying to talk to my clients and people who are chefs about mental illness. I got told the same thing. We don't talk about this. We just get on, we do our 80 hours, we do our 9, 10, 11, 12 days in a row, and we just cope with it. We just, just man up, get on with it.
Mm.
And I thought, well, this is fucked. Like, this is unsustainable. Like, I know the damage and the impact it had on me and my family and my working life, and yet I saw it so frequently within the hospitality profession.
Mm.
So I wanted to get people talking because I understood the benefits of that. And the Burnt Chef project, believe it or not, it was just a photography campaign. That's all it was meant to be. I
Right.
was taking black and white photos of hospitality professionals to raise awareness for the fact that we all have mental health. And opening conversations is a great way of being able to try and challenge the stigma and get people the help that they need sooner. The first photos that I took were really, really, really challenging. The chef I first took a photo of said, "It's a brilliant photo. Can I share it on social media?" I went, "Yeah, sure, no problem." And they said, "Well, what's it for?" And I said, "It's to raise awareness for mental health." And he went, "No way. I'm not sharing that." He said, "I'll lose my job. I'll lose respect. People will think differently of me." Safe to say that first photo got shared. And then I started clocking up 10, 50, 100 photos of people. And every single time I was taking a photo, I was hearing about someone's experiences, whether it was with addiction, whether it was with divorce, whether it was with work-life balance or leadership. And I thought to myself, these stories are so loud that this can't be just a regional thing on the south coast of England. And thus the Burnt Chef project idea was born. That culminated in me standing up in a room full of 60 people back in October 2019, talking about my own experiences. And the response from that event was incredible. People were sharing their experiences, asking what was next. And fast forward 6 years later, May is our sixth year birthday. We have now built something that answers a lot of those questions. It provides tools, educational resources, and therapeutic services to 184 countries.
That's amazing. So how did it grow so fast? I mean, what was the initiator for that it became from south of England type of thing to a now worldwide movement?
Yeah, a number of things. First and foremost, timing. I mean, so I set the project up before COVID, and obviously COVID was a disastrous time for our sector. A brilliant time and also a challenging time for individuals. We've gone from working at 100 miles an hour with little rest to all of a sudden being sat in a garden, hearing birds for the first time, spending time with family members. And that was both a welcome break, but also really challenging because, as hospitality professionals, we work fast, we like to be moving, we're active. And so suddenly sitting down and spending time in a full stop was challenging for certain individuals. During that time, one of our key successes is that I'd started a clothing brand to raise funds to partly pay for our work. And over lockdown, the clothing that I was shipping to Bournemouth or London or Liverpool suddenly started popping up in Japan, in Durban, in Chicago, in Toronto, in Sydney.
Mm.
And people were reaching out going, I've just bought this item of clothing. I really believe in what you're doing. What's next?
Hmm.
So the clothing helped. It helped generate some revenue, which we then reinvested back into free education and free support mechanisms. And it also allowed us to be able to reach a global audience. But
Yeah.
on top of that, that question, what's next? And a lot of the time my answer is, I don't know. Like this is a photography campaign. What do you think is next? And so I think the other key to success and growth is first and foremost, I knew I always wanted to do this worldwide. Once I understood that the same problems and the conversations I was having globally were present, I knew that there was only one way of doing this, and this was tackling this globally. And initially that was, oh, someone's visited the website or bought clothing from America. So we're a global organization now. But it's amazing what the power of words and conversations can have. And actually, if you keep telling yourself, this has to be global, this is a worldwide organization, it means that every action that you take from there on out is designed or even subconsciously prompting you to make sure that everything you do is based for that worldwide audience.
Mm.
So the tools, the education, and the resources that we've built have been governed by the community, which then obviously means that as a community interest project, they're then spreading the word. I think the third and final thing I'll say about the global expansion is the our mission to eradicate stigma and improve the working environment has been, I mean, it's the critical part of success is our global volunteers program.
Mm.
And back sort of 4 or 5 years ago, I always wanted to create a network of hospitality professionals from various roles, all with lived experiences who want to try and create change within the hospitality industry. We have 250 of those volunteers currently in most countries, including places like Norway, Colombia, Argentina, all over Australia, America, Canada, Ireland. And that's amazing.
Mm.
And we're seeing that continue to grow. And these individuals are the core foundational pillar of explaining to people what we do, what our mission is, helping us to raise funds, and also to educate the future generation. And to give you some context, we have 250 at the moment. One of our Australian ambassadors is over in the UK, currently visiting as well. But we've just finished, we opened up our application portal for March, and we're going to open it up again for October. And during March, we had 204 applicants registering to be part of this fantastic movement. So that takes our numbers to almost 500 volunteers
Wow.
in just a few short years. And so again, they are critical to representing the different languages, cultures, experiences of a global hospitality community.
Mm. Mm. And so you mentioned this started as a photography project. So was that like a driving factor to get people to loosen their tongues and so how do you actually, you said it's difficult to talk about, and how do you break into having people open themselves up? What are the challenges?
I think the challenge is look, in hospitality, and specifically back at House of Chefs, it's a work hard, play hard culture, right? You know that I'll give you an example. When we do work out in Germany and certain parts of like the States, for example, you get sick pay. In Germany, you get full pay by the government to be off sick. Yet, interestingly enough, culinarians don't take time off sick because they don't want to let their team down. They don't want to put undue pressure on other people. And sometimes, there's a machoism which is associated with don't want to be that weak link, right?
Mm.
Um, so from that side of things, that's a challenge in terms of opening up dialogue. However, what I identified with the photography campaign is first and foremost, I shared my experiences with those I was taking photos of. I
Mm.
didn't necessarily go deep and heavy, but people knew why I was there and why I was taking photos. Secondly, when you are not making direct eye contact with someone and they're in a storeroom or behind a pass ready to have their photo taken, there's something about that process that elicits a conversation. People feel comfortable talking to you about this because they know that you understand, not necessarily the subtle nuances of their experiences, but you understand what it's like to be in the weeds and to struggle with your mental health. And having that ability to be able to have that dialogue without necessarily always locking onto eye contact was, I think, a great opportunity for people to be able to open up an experience and talk about it as well. Um, I think in certain cultures, they say if you take a photograph, it captures someone's soul. And I certainly think that that's true with the photography campaign.
Mm, mm. And so you coming from outside of the kitchen, looking in, uh, do you see there is I mean, is it a different situation to other parts of societies, the hospitality industry and or the kitchen in particular? Do you think you're more exposed to mental health issues or?
Yeah, I do. Now, I should preface this. I mean, I've spoken at conferences in different parts of the world around subjects like burnout and mental health issues for other sectors. So, like journalism, politicians, advertising agencies. There are stress and high pressure points and mental health issues in every sector. So we are not unique in that respect. However, I think what is unique to our industry is that there are things that we can do that take preventative steps to try and mitigate that. You know, for a long time, I got told this is just the way it is. It's never going to change. You just either have to build your resilience or get out of the way and move out of the industry, which is hemorrhaging our workforce. It's killing our sector, and we've seen that as a result of COVID, where people have gone, do you know what? I would prefer a work-life balance. So when you look at other industries, like for example, I worked in finance in insurance for 4 years, and if if you were to say to someone, right, you sit at your computer for 80 hours, you don't necessarily know when your next day off is coming. You're going to have a heater blowing at you from one side and someone with a megaphone shouting in your ear from another side, and this is the norm. You would think that's ludicrous. Could you imagine a white collar office worker taking those environmental and audio and stress positions?
Mm,
So when I look at hospitality, and I've spent a lot of time in kitchens, whether that was providing the goods or taking photos, yeah, or even trying to help out from time to time, which there's a story about gold leaf that didn't go quite well when I tried to help. But I think when we start to look at those environments, our environments are quite noisy, they're fast paced, you're on your feet all the time, you're having to juggle a lot of different things all at one time, often over sustained periods of time as well. That can make it challenging. The human body and the brain is not built to operate like a robot. And so I look at this profession more like an Olympic sport.
mm,
You know, you wouldn't expect Usain Bolt to run a 100-meter race, stop, have a cigarette, a shot of espresso, a handful of chips from the pass, go back to the start, run it again, and for someone to say, you need to be better, you need to be faster, and for them to repeat and repeat and repeat and repeat.
mm, mm, mm,
Why not? You know, because he's going to fatigue, his performance is going to drop, he's going to be more prone to injury or accident. So when we look at hospitality and we look at certainly from a chef's perspective, we need to start understanding that stress is going to be present. It's mental gymnastics at its very best. So what can we do in terms of dialing up both our self-protection mechanisms as well as what can we do within our environments to understand, all right, we need to be trained like sports athletes. We need to have the right protection mechanisms, the right time off, the right recovery periods, so that we can show up every single day and provide the most incredible experiences for our guests.
mm. I mean, it's amazing that you are now 250 volunteers and potentially 500 if everybody qualifies. And but you can't be everywhere. So for our listeners, what can how can I detect or anybody listening working in an environment detect in yourself that you might have a problem and admit it, or be observant when it comes to your colleagues. That can you sort of reach out and detect if you see issues in yourself or others? What are the symptoms, or what sort of how can one react?
It's a great question. Yeah, a great question. I think first and foremost, opening up a conversation. And there's a thing called active listening, which is where rather than waiting for your turn to speak, you actually spend time putting energy into to listening, not just to what people are saying in terms of their voice, but also their tonality, how their body language is, and start trying to read between the lines. You know, I think the other key thing that we teach at the Burnt Chef Project is the use of silence as well. Often enough, in we're high pressured environments, time is not a resource that we have in abundance. So when it comes to sort of checking in on someone, it's the age old thing. Are you all right? Yeah, I'm fine. Yeah, just crack on,
Mm,
right? But being able to ask open questions, both with yourself and also with other people, and then provide that time, that attention, and that silence, and enable that person to be able to speak openly. You don't need to be a professor of psychology or a doctor. What we really value, and in hospitality, this is specifically true, is connection.
mm,
And in order for us to be able to feel like we're seen and heard, we need to connect with another human being. There are also, as part of our charitable work, we provide 22 free e-learning modules on the Burnt Chef Academy, which is available via our website. It's only in English at the moment, but there are modules on there to do with suicidal indicators, addiction behaviors, how to eat properly to fuel your performance, how to get better sleep, how to understand what effective communication is and active listening. And these are modules that have been accessed now close to 70,000 times in the last 3 years. And they're freely available to all listeners to be able to learn more about what's going on with themselves. I do also just want to address, you asked about individuals and how do we know when things aren't perhaps going as well as they should be. I think there's an internal monologue that we all have, and I think being aware of your internal monologue is important. But that's a skill. That's something that requires learning. I think understanding what your behaviors are when things are going well. Do you feel like you have energy? Do you feel like you're able to provide other people with time and attention? Do you feel that you have control over your eating habits at this moment in time and you can make conscious decisions on, I'm going to eat a healthy diet? Or do you feel at this moment in time that there aren't enough hours in the day that you just want to binge on sugar or alcohol or cigarettes or drugs? Do you feel that your attention span is wandering? Are you grinding your teeth? Different people will have different experiences, but if these are yes to some of these questions, maybe that's then a sign that, okay, I need to take a step back and start prioritizing my own self-care. That might be, do I go for a walk in fresh air for 20 minutes? Do I listen to some music? Am I drinking enough water, which is often a guilty thing with us because we're too busy, but actually within fast-paced environments, you tend to dehydrate quicker. Is that I need to spend some time with my friends or my family, or, I think if you can recognize those signs and start to get better at recognizing those signs earlier, you can then have like a little toolkit, like a mise en place list of things that you're able to do to start to tackle that from a proactive perspective. Because if you've got a broken arm, just leaving it broken isn't going to fix it. You're going to need to take steps to actually repair that. And that's a journey that it's a healthy habit that you start to build over time.
mm, mm. Do you see there is it has somehow shift in Are tongues really sort of loosening since you started? And I mean, you've been dealing with this since, like you mentioned, 2012, you came out of college, and already you were dealing with certain issues on yourself. And then in 2019, you started the program. Uh, is it easier to talk about mental health in hospitality today than it was back then? Uh, did COVID change all that, or sort of is it just a more open mind spirit now?
Yeah, so I'd like to be able to say I came out of college at 2012, first and
Yes,
foremost, at 40. I don't think that's
I misspoke that one, but so yeah, I'm not gonna not don't
no,
let the truth ruin a great story. So that
no, of course. I think I mean if anyone sees a video, they'll think, God, this guy's had a hard paper round. Um, Uh, Listen, I think that there's multiple things. Yeah, I'd like to be able to say that the Burnt Chef project has revolutionized the conversations in this, but that would be very egotistical to say that. I think COVID definitely helped raise awareness for this, and I think that COVID still has long-lasting impacts when it comes down to psychological health conditions, etc. There's definitely an increase in anxiety. I think digital technology is causing a lot of issues as well in a fast-paced society, and people have become more aware of the impacts of that. And there's a lot of research from various global organizations focused on around these subject matters. So I think that there is a multiple things that are helping challenge stigma and open conversations. But if I'm completely and utterly honest, this is a we've changed so massively in terms of open dialogue, resources, support mechanisms from a societal point of view, but this is going to take generational shifts. You know, even myself, who publicly talks about my own experiences, every single time I go to talk about this, I feel a small little niggling sense of shame and stigma still. And I'm the advocate for this particular thing. And when you look back on, if you search Google like mental health stigma in history, you'll see holes being drilled in skulls to let the demons out, and you'll see straitjackets and Jack Nicholson in The Shining misrepresenting schizophrenia. So this has been stigmatized for hundreds of years, and so it's not going to change overnight. But sharing stories, opening up, providing a listening ear will help increase that rate of change. And it doesn't necessarily mean that we all need to be holding hands, singing Kumbaya and cuddling each other every time we see each other. You know, we do need to have a natural or a built resilience to be able to cope with demands of pressure of society and life and work. But we've got to understand that the profound impact is that 4 out of 5 hospitality professionals will or have struggled with their mental health at some stage in their career. And so we need to do more to tackle the stigma associated with this.
Now that's an amazing figure that you mentioned there, and you discussed earlier the working environment in hospitality. Uh, how are you addressing this to top management? They are the ones who actually can then, by investing in their people and creating the environment, can probably soften things or make a bumper for these incidents, individuals not having a burnout and leading to mental health.
This is where I mentioned in my story that people said that this is the way it is. It's never going to change. And when you look at the problem, you look at it there's so many different avenues included in trying to create sustainable change that it seems too big and too daunting. So, for example, in the last few years, we've trained 160 catering colleges across the globe in recognizing the early signs of stress, mental health issues, and also what a good culture looks like within an organization. This is, you know, the young rising stars or future stars of hospitality, 17, 18, 19-year-olds. We've also worked with CEOs, HRDs, financial directors of organizations to explain that actually, for example, 40% of all turnover, according to Deloitte, is as a direct result of mental health issues. Within the UK, the health and safety executives say that 1 in 2 working days lost are as a direct result of stress and mental health issues. So when we speak to business owners, we say to them, look, the sooner you start looking after your workforce and leading by example in terms of opening conversations, putting preventative models in place, such as workplace risk assessments on stress, providing the right tools and resources for people to be educated in what it means to have good leadership, strong culture, and work-life balance, then the better your return on that investment is. And let me give you a stat here. On average, hospitality organizations, whether you're a restaurant, a bar, um, a mom and pop restaurant, whatever it might be, turnover rates are between 70 and as much as 150% per year. And I think a lot of the audience now listening to this will go, I know, I hear that, I feel that. With turnover rates being so high, the average cost of recruitment is £2,500, which is what, $3,200 per person to train, to ensure payroll, wastage, mistakes, all of these elements. Now, if these individuals are staying for less than 30 days and you're losing 100% of those people a year, you can suddenly start to see, actually, hold on a second, the better we provide great environments for people to stay, the more likely we're going to be able to save. And in one example of 7 sites we worked with, we saved them £2 million a year.
Absolutely.
2 million. So we've got the grassroots. We're looking at how we work with executive teams, and it's a hard sell because we're trying to just survive at the moment. The industry's not easy. It's challenging. And this isn't a quick fix. There's no like quick return on investment. It's going to take a strategy to change this. But there's also something that we can do as individuals. That's people who are working, CDPs, sous chefs, waiters, servers, housekeepers, you name it, as well as the general management and head chef, executive chef levels, we can do as well. And that starts by taking small changes. When was the last time you caught up one-on-one with a team member?
Right.
When did you do I hate the term coffee and catch up because it's got such a really crap negativity associated with it. But when was the last time you sat down with someone and said, we haven't caught up in a while, how are you doing? And then just shutting up and allowing that individual to speak and going, what are you up to at the weekend? What are you doing? What do you see from your career in the next 2 years? How can I help you get to that point? And just connecting with individuals. So there's something that no matter where you are within your hospitality, either profession or career or age, there is something that all of us can do now to start to create a better working environment. And that starts with just taking that time and impetus to actually start to actually look at how do we make that in. Here's an interesting story. When we train hospitality teams, and that's front of house, back of house, and management teams, often enough, we say to them, are you struggling with recruitment? And they will say, hell yes. And we say, okay. So you want people to come into hospitality? And they're like, yes, we do. I'm like, okay. So I said, how many of you in the room have children? And a whole load of people will put their hand up. I said, oh. Would you let your children work in hospitality? And all of the responses that we get, bar about 20% of people will say, hell no, we will not let our children work in this sector. And I think we've got a bit of a problem here. And so we as a community need to create the environments that we feel are going to be safe for our children moving forward. And until we start to take responsibility for that, we're not going to see a longer term change.
Absolutely. Well, these are strong words, and they deserve a blank silence and let it sink in. But I want to thank you, Kris. I want to thank you for coming and sharing all that. And you mentioned you have a lot of resources online, and so we will share those in your social media and where people can find you and reach out to maybe learn more and whether they need help or they want to provide help, that they can be a part of your movement.
Yes, that would be great. I mean, I should mention at this point, we for the last year we've had a global therapy service that's been free for people to access. But there's been barriers to access outside of the UK because people would have to email in or phone a UK number, which is not great, you know. So we have now upgraded that service and going live on the 21st of May. This episode might be out before then or after then. We are the first non-profit organization in the globe to offer hospitality people free access to life coaching, therapy, emotional support, legal, debt advice, and managerial support with toll-free numbers in every single country we operate in and multiple languages. So when people contact us now, they'll get through to a trained counselor or therapist in their country, speaking their language, aware of their culture, who's able to have a conversation with them, find out where their pinch points are, and work with them to try and help repair those. And that's something that we provide at a cost of about $120 per person to our global industry. So that's a service as well that's available to everyone listening now.
That's amazing. Thank you, Kris, for sharing that. And be assured that with the World Chefs, we are very much eager to help you reach more people and raise the awareness. So we'll be keeping in close contact and spread the word, spread the awareness.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And thanks for having me on.
Thank you, Kris. And thank you, everybody, for listening. You're listening to World Chef Podcast. I'm your host, Ragnar Fredriksson, and this is World on a Plate. Take care. Bye-bye.